The wind carried dust across the long trail as Jacob Morgan rode slowly toward the hills. The sun burned bright above the desert, painting everything in gold and red. His horse moved at a steady pace, hooves tapping against the dry ground. Jacob's face was calm, but his thoughts were heavy. He had been sent to collect a debt, something he did not like doing, but the ranch owner he worked for trusted him to handle things the right way. He was fair and honest, never rude or loud, and people respected him for that. Still, he hoped the man he was going to see would pay what he owed without trouble. The name of the man was Clay Benson. Months ago, Clay had borrowed money to buy cattle and promised to pay it back after the sale. But the season had passed, the cattle were gone, and the ranch owner had not seen a single dollar. So Jacob had been asked to ride out to Clay's place and bring back the payment, or at least get a promise. Jacob didn't like being the kind of man who knocked on doors asking for money. He preferred to build fences, mend saddles, or work with his hands. But work was work, and he did what had to be done. By afternoon, Jacob saw thin smoke rising in the distance, a sign of a campfire or chimney. He rode toward it, and after another mile, the land opened to a small valley with a lonely cabin sitting under 2 dry cottonwood trees. The barn beside it looked half-broken. The fence sagged, and no animals could be seen anywhere. The place felt quiet, too quiet. Jacob slowed his horse and called out, but no one answered. He dismounted and tied his horse to a post. As he walked up to the porch, he saw someone sitting there. A woman. Her long dark hair was tied loosely and her blanket was wrapped around her shoulders. She looked calm but watchful, her eyes deep and quiet like still water. Jacob could tell right away she wasn't Clay's wife. There was something different about her, something strong and proud. She looked Apache. Jacob removed his hat politely. "Ma'am, good afternoon," he said in a gentle voice. "I'm looking for Clay Benson. Is he here?" The woman looked at him for a moment before speaking. "He is gone," she said softly. "He left 2 days ago." "He will not return," Jacob frowned. "Gone? Where did he go?" She shook her head. "He did not tell me. Only that he would not come back." Jacob rubbed his chin. That didn't sound right. Clay was a man who liked easy money, not a man who would walk away from everything. Did he leave anyone behind? He asked carefully. The woman looked away toward the hills. "He left me," she said quietly. "He traded me for 2 horses and a wagon." Jacob froze, not sure he heard right. "Traded you?" he repeated in disbelief. She nodded slowly. "He said I was part of the deal. But I was promised safety. That was before he decided I was worth less than his wagon." Jacob felt something heavy rise in his chest. He looked at her again, her calm face, her steady eyes, and felt both anger and pity. "That's not right," he said softly. "No one should do that to another person." She looked at him, her eyes sharp but tired. "It is done," she said. "The trader left, Clay left. Now there is only the wind and the empty land." Jacob glanced around. The barn was falling apart, the well was dry, and the place looked abandoned. "You got food or water?" he asked. "Little," she said. "Enough for 1 day. Maybe 2, Jacob sighed. He wasn't a man who could ride away from someone in need, even if it wasn't his problem. "You got somewhere to go? Family close by?" "My people are far north," she said softly. "Too far to reach before the cold. The soldiers close the passes. I cannot go there." Jacob looked toward the horizon, then back at her. "If you stay, it's not safe," he said. "You'll need shelter, food, company." She looked at him, studying his face. "You came for a debt," she said slowly. "Will you take me as payment?" Jacob blinked, caught by surprise. "Ma'am, I do not mean to be owned," she said before he could finish. "I choose to leave. I choose to go where I am not forgotten." Jacob's chest tightened. Her words were steady, not desperate. She wasn't begging. She was choosing. It was her way of taking back her life. He didn't know what to say, so he nodded quietly. "Let's see if you're ready to travel," he said. As the sun began to sink, they packed what little she had, a small leather bag, a blanket, a few dried roots, and a canteen. She moved calmly, wasting no motion, her hands strong and sure. Jacob helped fix her bundle to his horse and set out a small campfire for the night. He offered her half of his bread and jerky. She accepted it politely, eating slowly. When night fell, the desert grew cold. Jacob lay a few feet away near the fire. He looked at the stars and tried to understand what had just happened. He had come to collect a debt. Instead, he was helping a woman who had been treated like she was worth less than a wagon. Yet something about her calm courage touched him deeply. In the quiet of the night, he heard her soft voice. "Your name?" she asked. "Jacob Morgan," he said. She nodded slightly.
"I am Naya," she said.
"My name means moon in my tongue. It suits you," he said gently. She looked at him for a moment, then turned toward the fire, her face lit by the orange glow. The next morning, the air was cold and clear. Jacob saddled his horse and checked the trail. Naya stood by the porch with her blanket around her shoulders. She looked at the cabin one last time, then turned to him. "There is nothing left here," she said simply. Jacob nodded. "Then let's go." She climbed up behind him, moving with ease. Her hands rested lightly at his side, not holding tight, just steady. When the horse started moving, Jacob felt her calm presence behind him. For the first time in years, he didn't feel like he was riding alone. They followed the dusty road out of the valley. The cabin faded behind them until it was only a dark spot among the hills. Jacob didn't look back again. The sun rose higher, warming the land. Naya sat quietly, her dark hair moving with the wind. After some time, Jacob said softly, "You sure about this? You don't know me." "I know enough," she replied calmly. "You speak with respect. You look at people, not through them. That is more than most." He smiled faintly. "Maybe. But I don't know where we're heading yet." "Then we will find the way together," she said simply. They stopped at a creek to rest. Naya knelt by the water, cupped her hands, and took a small drink. The sunlight sparkled on the stream, and for the first time, Jacob saw her smile faintly. It was a quiet, peaceful smile that made him feel something deep and unfamiliar. He filled his canteen and watched her reflection ripple in the water. "People in town might not understand," he said carefully. "I know," she said. "They will whisper. But I have lived through worse than whispers. I walk with my head high." Jacob nodded. Her strength humbled him. She was not fragile or lost. She was simply free now. He realized she wasn't asking for protection. She was choosing her path, and somehow that path now included him. As the day went on, they rode farther into the open land. The wind was gentle, and the smell of sage filled the air. Naya hummed softly in her language, a tune that sounded like the earth itself was singing. Jacob listened, feeling peace settle over him. When the sky began to turn orange, they found a small ridge to camp on. From there, they could see miles of open land stretching under the setting sun. Jacob built a small fire while Naya gathered dry branches. She sat near the flames, her blanket around her shoulders. The light flickered softly between them. "You came to take something," she said quietly, her eyes on the fire. "But instead you gave me back my freedom." Jacob looked at her, unsure how to answer. "Maybe we both found something we didn't expect," he said. She smiled faintly, and for the first time since he met her, the sadness in her eyes faded a little. The night air grew colder, and the fire burned low, but neither of them felt alone anymore. Two travelers, brought together by chance, beginning a road neither of them had planned to take, but both knew it was the right one. The morning air was cool as Jacob and Naya rode toward the nearest town. The sun rose slowly behind the hills, painting the desert in soft gold. The trail was quiet except for the sound of hooves and the soft creak of the saddle. Jacob tried to think about what he would say when they reached the town. People there didn't like outsiders much, and they surely wouldn't understand why he was bringing an Apache woman with him. But when he glanced back at Naya, sitting straight and calm behind him, he decided not to worry. She wasn't afraid, so neither would he be. By midday, they reached a small stream. They stopped to rest, letting the horse drink. Naya looked around the valley. "The land is peaceful here," she said softly. "Not like the place we left." Jacob nodded. "Yeah, it feels cleaner, safer." She smiled faintly. "Maybe it's because we are free." He looked at her for a moment, then nodded again. He didn't say it aloud, but he felt the same. For the first time in years, his journey had meaning. As the sun began to fall, the roofs of the small town appeared in the distance. Smoke rose from chimneys, and a few wagons rolled down the dusty main street. Jacob slowed his horse. "We'll find a place to rest tonight," he said. "Then I'll talk to the sheriff about Clay's debt. After that, we'll figure out what comes next." Naya said nothing. Her dark eyes watched the people moving around the street as they entered. Some stopped to stare. A few whispered. A woman by the store pulled her child closer. Jacob felt his stomach tighten, but he kept riding, pretending not to notice. He stopped near the inn and dismounted. "Wait here," he said gently. "I'll get us a room." When he walked into the inn, the keeper looked up from behind the counter. "Evening, Jacob," he said with a small smile. "Didn't expect to see you this far from the ranch." "Evening, Hank," Jacob said. "Need a room for the night." Hank nodded and took a key, but then he glanced past Jacob toward the window. "That woman outside with you, she Apache?" Jacob hesitated. "She is. Her name's Naya." Hank scratched his chin. "You sure about bringing her in here?" "Some folks might talk." Jacob met his eyes firmly. "She's with me, Hank, that's all that matters." The innkeeper studied him for a moment, then nodded slowly. "All right. I'll put you in the back room. It's quiet." Jacob thanked him, took the key, and went back outside. Naya was standing near the horse, calm as ever, her eyes meeting his with quiet understanding. "They don't like me here," she said softly. He sighed. "They just don't understand. But they'll learn." She smiled faintly. "I am not afraid." They went inside together. Some people stared, but Jacob ignored them. He led her to the small room at the back. It was simple, just 2 beds, a table, and a lamp, but it was warm. Naya looked around curiously. "It is small," she said, "Ma, but it feels safe." Jacob smiled. "That's all we need tonight." They ate quietly. He shared his bread and beans with her, and she thanked him with a gentle nod. After dinner, Jacob went to talk to the sheriff. Naya stayed by the window, watching the town lights flicker under the dark sky. At the sheriff's office, Jacob explained about Clay Benson running off and leaving his debt unpaid. The sheriff, a tall man with a gray beard, leaned back in his chair. "Clay's been trouble for a while," he said. "Ain't surprised he skipped town. But if you found his place empty, there's not much you can collect." "I figured as much," Jacob said. "I just needed to report it." "I'll tell Mr. Harlan when I get back." The sheriff nodded. "You staying long?" "Just tonight," Jacob said. The sheriff looked at him curiously. "That woman with you, she part of this story?" Jacob's voice was calm but firm. "She was left behind when Clay ran. I couldn't just leave her to die out there." The sheriff nodded slowly. "You always did have a good heart, Morgan. Just be careful. Folks around here like to talk, and they don't always talk kind." "I'll handle it," Jacob said simply. When he returned to the room, Naya was sitting by the lamp, sewing a small tear in her blanket. She looked up as he entered. "They asked about me?" she said. He nodded. "They did. But don't worry. I told them the truth." She smiled faintly. "The truth is enough." The next morning, they left town early. Jacob didn't want trouble, and he knew she preferred open land to crowded streets. As they rode, the sky stretched wide and bright again, and the air felt cleaner. Naya seemed lighter, too. She hummed softly, a song from her people. After a few hours, they stopped near a quiet meadow. Jacob looked around. "I could build a small cabin here," he said. "It's good land, close to water." Naya looked around, her eyes soft. "It feels alive," she said. "If you build it, I will help." Jacob smiled. "You'd stay?" She nodded. "I said I would walk with you. I keep my word." From that day, they began to build a new life together. Jacob cut wood from the nearby trees while Naya cleared the land and made a small fire for cooking. She worked with steady hands, never complaining, never afraid of hard labor. By evening, they had built a simple frame for the walls. Jacob looked at it proudly. "Doesn't look like much yet," he said, "but it's a start." Naya smiled. Everything starts small. Even the tallest trees were once seeds. Each day they worked side by side. Jacob taught her how to handle the tools, and she showed him how to find herbs and roots for food. She knew how to read the signs of weather, when the wind would change, when the rain was near. Jacob admired her wisdom. He realized she saw the world differently, not through fear or greed, but through balance. At night, they sat by the fire, sharing quiet stories. Jacob told her about his childhood in Kansas, how he came west after his parents died, how he'd worked his whole life on ranches. Naya told him about her tribe, her mother who sang to the moon, her brother who taught her to ride bareback through the hills. Sometimes her voice trembled when she spoke of them, but she always ended with a smile. "They live in my heart," she said. "When I look at the stars, I feel them near." Weeks passed, and the cabin slowly took shape. One morning, Jacob noticed the way the sunlight touched her hair as she carried water from the creek. Something inside him softened. She wasn't just a companion now, she was part of his world, part of his peace. One afternoon, a wagon arrived from town. It was the ranch owner, Mr. Harlan. He had come to ask about the debt. When he saw Naya working by the cabin, he looked confused. You brought company back, I see, he said. Jacob nodded. Clay's gone. He left her behind. I couldn't leave her there. Harlan scratched his head. Well, I suppose you did what you thought was right. But folks might not see it the same way. Jacob looked him straight in the eye. They don't have to. She's my partner now. We built this place together. Harlan studied him for a moment, then smiled faintly. You always were different, Morgan. You follow your own road. I respect that. When Harlan rode away, Jacob turned to Naya. She had heard everything but said nothing. She simply smiled and handed him a piece of bread she had baked that morning. You spoke like a man of honor, she said. He smiled back. You made me one, he said softly. By the time the first snow touched the hills, their cabin was finished. Smoke rose from the chimney and their little field was ready for spring. They stood together outside one evening, watching the sunset paint the sky in red and gold. Naya leaned lightly against him, her face calm. You came to collect a debt, she said quietly, and instead you found a life. Jacob smiled. I think I was the one in debt all along, he said. You just helped me pay it back. The wind blew softly through the grass, carrying the scent of wood smoke and wild sage. The world felt still and peaceful. They had no riches, no fine clothes, no titles, but they had something stronger. Two hearts that had chosen each other freely. As the stars began to appear, Jacob looked at her and said, Tomorrow we'll start planting. Naya smiled, her eyes shining in the firelight. Yes, she said softly, and after that we'll see what the land gives us. Together they stood, watching the night grow deep. The cabin behind them glowed warm, and the road they had taken, the one that began with debt and ended with choice, was now their shared story. A quiet bond, written not in promises but in every sunrise and every step they took side by side.